Hi everyone, I'm Freddie and I like books. February has so far been a great reading month for me and I foresee it continuing for this last little bit of February. So the TBR I've put together for March might be a little bit ambitious, but honestly, I don't think it is, and I am a mood reader, so I like to have some options sometimes so I can pick between different books when I feel like it. Some of these books are for series where I'm in the middle of them and I want to continue on. Some are beginnings to series, and some are standalones. So I have some different options there as well. But let's just get right into my March TBR. First off, I have The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, which is the fourth Wheel of Time book. Now, if you're eagle-eyed, you might notice this is not The Shadow Rising, this is The Dragon Reborn. This is the third book that I expect I will finish before March, and I don't have the fourth book yet. I've ordered it to my bookstore, but it hasn't come home yet, so as soon as it does, I'll pick it up and I'll have it. So this is a stand-in for now. But I do foresee that I will read this by the end of February. I will then be reading The Shadow Rising in March. Now, if you're not familiar, this is an epic fantasy series following multiple characters with a focus on Randall Thor, who starts out as a shepherd on his father's farm, but events will not let him stay that way. I haven't read this one yet, the third one, but I really enjoyed the first two. I read them in February, and I have vlogs up for both of them as well of me reading them, and I'm planning to shoot one for the third one as well and continuing on. And if the third one keeps me hooked anyway, like the second one did, I will be continuing straight on into the fourth one as soon as I'm done, I'm sure. And if I do keep going at that speed, I'll probably tentatively add Fires of Heaven and Lords of Chaos, which are book 5 and 6, which I've also ordered at the bookstore, so I'll have those as well, to the TBR as well, because if I do finish this before the end of February, then I've read 3 in this month, and I foresee I will keep up at least that pace in March as well. While these are chunky books, I do foresee I'll still have time to read other books. I've done the same in February. So let's get on to the rest of my TBR. Next up, I have a standalone, and that would be The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wang. This is an adult fantasy which takes place in a Japanese-inspired setting, following a family of warriors in a war-torn empire. And that's basically all I know. This is Emma Wang's first book, and I've heard great things since it came out, and I've wanted to read it since I started hearing great things. And I even have it on my Kindle, and I just kind of keep forgetting to read it. Emma Wang's second book just came out, and I'm hearing just as good, if not even better, things about that. So I'm taking it as kind of a push to get to reading Sword of Kaigen, and I can follow on with her newer release afterwards. After that, we have a bit of a shorter book, and that will be Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear by Seanan McGuire. This is the 10th book in the Wayward Children series, which is a middle grade portal fantasy, which is made up of novellas. They're all around 200 pages, something like that. In some of them, we follow a child through their door into their portal world, and some of the books we follow the children who have returned and are going to the school that kind of brings these kids together who have all gone through their doors, and it has an overarching plot with these kids back at the school. I read books 7, 8, and 9 in February, and I would have read book 10 as well if it wasn't on hold at my library. It's the newest release. It just came out earlier this year, so there's a bit of a wait, and as long as I get it from the library before the end of March, I should be able to read it in March. I'll say that the series has been somewhat hit and miss. I've loved some of the novellas and some of them I've been more meh on, but overall I've enjoyed it, so I'm excited to be caught up on the story. Next up, we have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in his young adult sci-fi series. It's set on a planet inhabited by humans who are driven to near extinction, and they are under constant attack from aliens. And we follow Spencer, who wants to be a pilot, and when she finds a broken spaceship out in the wild somewhere, she sees her chance if she can get it flying again. That's most of what I know. So I've read a lot of Sanderson's other work, and I've had this for years, so I really just need to get to it because I've heard good things. I have the first, second, and third book in the series. Just need to read it. What I always say, right? And then next up, we have a reread for me, and that would be Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Now, this is the first book in the Farseer trilogy, which is the first trilogy in the Realm of the Elderling series, which is made up of 4 trilogies and 1 quartet. I absolutely love this series, and I've set a goal for myself to reread the entire thing this year, in part because last year I finished the last books that I hadn't read yet, and that was the Rainwild Chronicles, which is the quartet, but I read them kind of out of order. So I binged through all of the books following Fitz, which is 3 of the trilogies, but there's a trilogy and a quartet in between those 3. So now that I've read all of them, I want to go through them in the order, because there are some characters that appear in trilogies that I didn't know when I read them. And I set a goal to read them all this year. There's 16 books, and this is the first one, and I haven't gotten around to it yet, so I need to get to it if I want to actually be able to, and this is the shortest by far, so I really need to get to it and get started on it if I want to be able to read all of them by the end of the year. And this is an adult high fantasy in which we follow Fitzchivalry, who is a royal bastard, and he's raised in the keep where the royal family is, but he's first raised in the stables, and then they end up deciding to train him to be an assassin's apprentice. And that might make it sound like a very action-packed, assassin-heavy trilogy. It's really not. Robin Hobb excels at character work and really writing very in-depth, very realistic characters, putting them through a bunch of things and kind of exploring how they develop based on what they've gone through, and emotionally destroying me. She excels at that as well. She's really great at making me love her characters and then being awful to them, and I love it. It emotionally destroys me, but I can't look away. I love them so much. It's been a couple of years since I last reread the first two trilogies. I think I've read the trilogy twice, and I'm excited to be back with Fitz as a little boy growing up. I'm also scared. He doesn't have it easy. I always say I'm really bad at picking favorites in general, but I'm pretty confident in saying that The Realm of the Elderlings, my favorite fantasy series, even if it does cost me a lot of emotional damage. Next on my list, we have The Lords of the North by Bernard Cornwell. This is the third book in a series, which I've never really been able to narrow down what the name is, because I feel like it's changed over the years. Probably most well known as the Last Kingdom series. That's what the TV show is called that was made adapting this series. And this is historical fiction set in the Viking ages, set in England, where we're following Uhtred, who if I remember right, was born to English parents, but then raised by Norsemen in England, and we're following kind of his life and everything that happens around him. Now, it's been quite a while since I read the first two, so I figure I'll need to find a summary. I can hear Setuan just going crazy in the living room. Sorry, she's running around like a lunatic. Yeah, so I figure I'll need to find a summary before I read this, just to remind me what happened, because I remember really enjoying the first two, but I don't remember many details. And I think there's 13 or 14 books in the series, and I have almost all of them. I think I'm missing one, like in the middle somewhere, but I want to read more historical fiction. I do like historical fiction, but it's not necessarily what I reach for first in general. So I want to try and be conscious about my choices and add this to the list, so I will remember to read it. And then next up, we have The Burning World by Isaac Marion. This is the sequel to Warm Bodies, which I've reread in February. It's a zombie love story between R, a zombie, and Julie, a human. Can't really go into many more details, I think, without spoiling anything. I read Warm Bodies the first time like 13 years ago, and the sequel came out some years later, and I never got around to reading it, so I really want to read it. I think there's a third book as well that I don't own. If I enjoy the sequel, then I'll look for the third book, so I have that as well to read when I feel like it. And then last but not least, we have a Danish book, because I'm trying to make sure I read Danish books as well, because lots of Danish authors are publishing books, and I have a habit of forgetting about them a little bit, because on the internet I don't hear about Danish books that much because they're Danish. So this is specifically books published in Danish, not translated work. So this month I have Skæbnetråde by Anna Tofdal Olesen and Kia Axelsen. This is a debut novel. It's dark fantasy in a world where vampires and humans have coexisted for 2,000 years, but now Drask threatens to expose vampires because he wants to be able to hunt humans openly. That's I think the gist of it. I'm not entirely sure. I prefer not to read too much about a book before going into it to limit my expectations and potential spoilers. This sounds like it's full of political intrigue, and I'm here for it. It's been a while since I read anything about vampires. It's all good. It just sounds very interesting. So this goes on a TBR as well. So those were all the books that I'm planning to read in March. We'll have to see how it goes. I have no doubts that I'll also end up reading other books that's not on the list either, just because I see them on the shelf and I feel like it, or I see it on Libby, or I see it on my Kindle. I'm very much a mood reader, so I can't really plan it out too much, but now I have somewhat of an idea. This is my first time doing like a monthly TBR type thing, so I'm very interested to see how I actually do. It's knowing me. I'm not sure I'll do great, but I'll do my best. Are there any books that you are planning on reading in March or looking forward to reading in March? Let me know down in the comments, and let me know as well if you've read any of these books on my list and whether you like them or not. Either way, I'll see you next time. Bye!